again for joining us over here at BlockShow. This time in Asia and Singapore. How have you found it so far?
Good, very good.
All right.
It's my second time to Singapore this year.
Oh, fantastic.
And it's great. Love the city.
You travel a lot.
I travel a lot. I'm traveling a lot this
What are
whole
the
year.
main things in the past year? What are the main topics that you've covered the past year?
The past year, a lot of conferences around the world have invited me to go speak. It's always my thing is always about Bitcoin, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, the rise of Bitcoin, the impact of Bitcoin as a new global currency. So that's my passion, that topic.
And let me ask you, have you found in the past year folks want you to speak a little bit deeper or more about other cryptos instead of that?
Have I spoken more about other cryptos?
No. Are they want you to? You know, they call you on your expertise as the man.
Yes.
But have you found in the past year that the calling is the basic, but they'd like a little bit more about other points and fields in the field?
Sure. People have asked me to speak about blockchain, blockchain technologies, how it applies to the real world, applications and so on. But in terms of other cryptocurrencies, I think Bitcoin captures it. I think Bitcoin being the first true cryptocurrency, we're in the 10th year, it was launched in 2009, January. So, the things that followed, of course, there's Litecoin, there's Ethereum. So those are still true cryptocurrencies, but the other stuff are all tokens. Right. Anything that's backed by a company, where it's based on a project, a utility, or a profit sharing of a project, those are digital tokens, crypto tokens, but they're not currency and not money in that same way. So I make that point clear, and then I think people understand that.
And what's your stance on tokenized assets?
Tokenized assets is an evolution of centralized sort of how do you say this? So it's not the first time, right? Banks would sell what they call paper gold, fractionalized gold. So bank would buy like a kilogram or 400 ounces of gold, and then they would parcel out for the customers. Some people can buy 1 ounce, 100 grams, 50 grams, and so on. And then the bank would keep a ledger of how many ounces the people hold. Right, so a tokenized asset is similar with the exception that instead of the bank keeping the ledger, they're throwing the ledger out onto the blockchain. People can see on the blockchain account record how many grams of gold you would hold. But fundamentally, it does not change the fact that a central entity, the bank or the central asset issuer, would hold the physical gold for redemption that you can redeem in the future.
Right.
So what we don't remove is we don't remove that centralized trust, that centralized reliability on that centralized asset holder to help you redeem the token. Because if they run away with the gold, or if the gold gets stolen and they did not buy sufficient insurance, then your tokenized asset is still worthless or can lose value because the underlying asset disappeared. Right? So it doesn't change that aspect. It only changes the aspect where you can transfer that token easier.
With this wealth of knowledge that you have, right, and that others would die to know, rumors, a word here or there about a book being penned by you.
Yeah.
What does that look like right now?
So from a very young age, I've always questioned, thought of maybe one day I could write a book. But back then, I never thought what topic, want to be a book author. Never thought. But recently, in the last year, I was like, hey, you know what? I've been doing crypto for the last 7-8 years, and I actually can and would be interested in writing a book about this. So I revealed, half a year ago to some people that I might be interested in writing a book. Unfortunately, not much progress has been made.
Publishers?
I've sort of, I'm looking for a good publisher. Okay. I want to make it I want to do a real book, not a just self-published book.
Okay.
I want to do a real book if people find this idea appealing. So I want to find the right publisher.
I think with you,
the topic would be something I'm very passionate about, which is Bitcoin itself as a new ownership model, as digital currency, as a global reserve currency.
Would you include your predictions or what to expect in the future? And as we talk about that, what do you expect in 2019?
So the price, let's put that aside first. What I do predict is Bitcoin, and I'll give a keynote about this sort of thing, the impact of Bitcoin. I'll give a keynote tomorrow about this. What I've come to realize is Bitcoin is a huge impact to human society. And the reason is, until now, there are two forms of ownership. What I mean by that is, how do you own something? For example, the jacket you're wearing, the earrings you have on, the watch, the bracelet. These are what we call physical ownership. The ring, or the clothing, the glasses, or the mobile phone we carry. We own it by virtue of us holding it. We have possession of it.
Right.
Gold and silver fall in that category. Red wine also fall in that category. However, the vast majority of our worth, of our net worth, is actually what I call title-based ownership.
Okay.
Real estate, cars, even boats and airplanes, stock account, brokerage account, even money in your bank. All of that is owned by under our name, Stephen Chase, Bobby Lee. So all of that, all the big, heavy, expensive things I own are owned under my name. And how do I get access to it? How do I utilize it? I would have to show my identification card, my passport, my ID, my driver's license. So by proving to a third party, I am who I am Bobby Christopher Lee, then I can get access to the assets and ownership of that. So those are the two ownership models. But Bitcoin represents a different and a new ownership model, which is ownership by information, by virtue of me knowing the private key to the Bitcoin account. The password, if you will, a very long password. I have access to that Bitcoin. I could transfer that Bitcoin to an exchange and sell it. I could transfer the Bitcoin to you and give it to you as a gift, or to pay you for your services and merchandise. So now we have a third type, which is ownership by information. So we've only had ownership by information for 10 years. And for the first many years, people didn't realize that. I only realized that in the last 2 years that, oh wow, Bitcoin is significant because it's ownership by information.
Ownership by information.
That's the essence.
I am John Doe walking down the street. I have a child, married, out of college, 3 years into a great job.
Yeah.
How is this ownership, how is that going to help me?
Well,
how is having that in my life?
For a regular person, well, regular person would own, the clothes they wear, the mobile phone, the eyeglasses, jewelry. All of that can be robbed, right, at gunpoint. Can be confiscated because they're physical things. Okay. Now, ownership by identity, ownership by title, the real estate, the bank account, stocks account, all of that can be frozen. Government can have legal action to freeze all your assets. You can't sell your home, you have no access to your money, you cannot sell your stocks, right? So these are real things that happen, to real people today. Most of these people today are all, criminals or at least they might be tried in the court of law, but they have the assets frozen first. But ownership by information is the only type of ownership where it cannot be confiscated.
Interesting.
There's no way to confiscate it because there's plausible deniability. So if you tell me you own 1 Bitcoin or you own 100 Bitcoin, there's no way for me to know unless you reveal to me. You can only prove the positive that you own the Bitcoin. You can never prove the negative, nor can I prove the positive for you unless you tell me first.
Interesting.
Right, so therefore I cannot confiscate the Bitcoins from you. So seizures, government seizing private citizens' property. My point with this ownership model is this is true freedom. If we consider ourselves as truly free human beings, that we're not slaves, then we have to have true ownership. And this is the only form of true ownership. If I have $100,000 in a bank account and someone can freeze it at will, deduct money from it, and not disallow me to withdraw money or disallow me to transfer money to someone else to pay for something, that's not ownership. I'm living under, handcuffs. Or I'm living under, if I worked all year last year for a salary as a salary worker, and that money gets put in the bank, and that money can normally give me a vacation to Europe, take my whole family to Europe for a European vacation, a 2-week vacation, if I've earned that much money. But yet, in 10 years, the money in the bank no longer affords me to take a 2-week vacation with my family. What does that mean? That means my money got stolen. The dollar amount may have increased with interest, but if the value of it has cut in half, then that means someone stole from me. That's slavery. That's modern slavery. Right? So that's what I mean the significance of true ownership is. In the end, it comes down to freedom.
So if it wasn't Bitcoin, what would it be? If you looking at what it's a crazy question, but looking at what you know now, if it wasn't Bitcoin,
that's a great question. Bitcoin opened my eyes to this. That's a very honest question, very honest answer. So I got into Bitcoin in 2011. When I first learned about it, when I first started investing and playing with it, I did not realize the significant impact of Bitcoin, the true impact of Bitcoin. It's only in the last 2 years, having been in this, knees deep, so to speak.
So what do you like when you see that? What are the other promising cryptocurrencies? Now we've taken a look at Bitcoin. I know.
So I can only tell you that what I own, what I hold personally is I hold Bitcoin.
All right.
I hold Bitcoin Cash and the variants from the fork. I hold Litecoin and Ethereum. So those are the only 4 cryptocurrencies I own that I hold. All the other tokens, no.
Everything else is just.
I haven't bought anything else.
That's respectful. All right. Well, the last question that I actually have for you is, what do you look for in other blockchain applications?
Oh, that's a loaded question. So I also have come to a conclusion. This is quite negative, very bearish.
Really?
I actually have realized that blockchain, the word blockchain, the technology, blockchain technology, cannot be properly applied to real-world activities. So all the so-called blockchain applications out there, whether it's real estate, titleship, whether it's supply chain tracking, all of that is BS. All of that can and should be done with a database, and it actually isn't to be done well with a blockchain.
Okay.
And the reason, fundamentally, this is going to be a long chapter in the book if I write it.
I understand this fully. I completely understand.
So the reason it comes down to how we as society define what is a blockchain.
Right.
Is the data in the blockchain better, more accurate, more trusted than the same data if it were to be in a database?
Right.
The theory is yes. The thinking is yes. Otherwise, databases and blockchains won't be very, very much different.
Right.
If the database says something is, if the database has a record about something real-world activity versus a blockchain having that same record, do we give the blockchain version more value because it's more trustworthy, more truthful,
more secure? Right. The ability for that information to change is lessened over here, right?
But I argue that's not the case, because how did the information get into the blockchain?
Oh, this is the
right.
master node. Let me tell you, this is one of my biggest gripes in
it's
the world right now.
That's exactly it. It's what we call garbage in, garbage out.
Yes.
If a mistake was made, either on purpose or by accident, the wrong data was put into the blockchain.
Right.
Then it's garbage in.
Right.
And then when people look at it, it's garbage out.
You know how I look at that?
Yeah.
What's the rating of these mortgages?
Yeah, sure.
What's the rating of these mortgages? A? Triple A? Exactly.
It's judgmental. It's an opinion.
Garbage in.
Garbage out. Yeah. So that's a problem. So you have this, let's say mortgage data you put in the blockchain. Well, it doesn't necessarily make it more accurate.
Absolutely not.
It certainly won't prevent fraud.
Right.
Right? Because the person putting the data in should always be reserved the right to make edits to it, because they can always make a mistake.
And then you have the topple.
The what?
And then it topples down if that's the case, because you shouldn't.
Yeah.
You can't change that.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
That's a case. That's a case. So a very real example is, should birth records, should identity be in the blockchain? When a baby is born at a hospital, should that be in the blockchain? Should
You're
that
talking
record?
about the transgender? Can they change their birth?
No. I'm just something very simple, non-controversial. So and so baby, whatever gender, was born at a hospital on a certain date, at a certain time, and with a certain weight. So that information, and with a certain nationality, the name and so on.
Right.
So if that were in the blockchain, people say, yeah, that's a permanent record, that's great, no one can modify it. But I argue against it, because mistakes are made.
Right.
Because we're humans.
They have happened.
Right. Maybe twins got recorded only as one birth, or maybe one birth got recorded twice. Right.
How do we
then you have
mitigate those
phantom. How do you mitigate those challenges, right? Because in the end, a real person is a real person, right? Whereas once in the blockchain, it can't be changed. Well, then who gets to decide when a person dies? How do you put the death certificate into the blockchain to show that the person lived from this year to that year? And who's allowed to put in the death record? Right? I mean, who's allowed to put in the birth record?
Right.
Who's allowed to put in the death record?
Right.
Because if you don't put in the death record, then you can have dead people voting. Right? On the other hand, if you put in a death record prematurely, then you can have a ghost. You can have a real person that's alive, that's dead according to the blockchain.
As well. Right, and that has happened as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my point is, these things like birth and death records, in the end, you have to trust the government. You have to trust some authority to record it properly. Right?
It's just like land ownership.
Land ownership, same thing.
In emerging markets, now there's a challenge with who's the person on the ground recording who's in their pocket.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of challenges.
It's a lot of challenges. So when people, for example, if I own this real estate, I sell to you, if I have a blockchain, I could use my private key to transact it and send that real estate title to you without a third party.
Right.
That sounds all good, but the real reality is that what if I lose that private password? What if I lose the private key by accident? Is there recourse? Can I go to some authority and say, please reissue me the title to my home because I want to sell it, right?
We've mentioned a few services
Yeah.
needed to scale, right? And to really reach adoption. Are those kind of like startups that interest you? Like startups that are touching in those fields?
We'll see. I've been very selective.
What's
so
been your
far,
parameter?
I've been, over this past year, I haven't found anything compelling to jump in myself.
Wow. I'm sure you come across.
I come across a lot. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I've been very, it speaks to, it sort of justifies my perspective, which is I have a very strict perspective of what applications, what businesses are truly blockchain. And my conclusion comes down to the basics that blockchain is only suitable for tracking and managing digital currencies, for being a ledger, a decentralized ledger for the digital currency itself. It cannot be used as a ledger for a real physical currency like a US dollar, or a Singapore dollar. It cannot be good for a real estate titles. It cannot be good for tracking gold. It cannot be good for tracking real world supply chain stuff. So that's the pessimistic conclusion.
Are approaching those sectors should still try to reach out to you to prove you wrong?
I'm happy to discuss with them. What I think they should do, the business models may be valid, just don't use the word blockchain. Don't rely on the blockchain technology.
Right.
Use a database for it.
Right.
That would be completely valid.
There's a lot of a spin on even taking the words crypto, and as we defined earlier, what's crypto? What's the tokenized, right?
Asset,
et cetera. A lot of people are using the marketing jargon right now of blockchain to circumvent the negatives that's coming out with crypto.
Sure.
So we got to watch out for that in the future as well.
Sure.
There's a lot of play in there. So I can't wait to see you again in another couple of months in another country.
Excellent.
It's great speaking to you, Bobby. Thank you so much.
Great chatting with you again.